Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Brian Murphy and Justin Thomas. It is time to talk playoffs, gentlemen. The girls basketball postseason gets rolling tonight. Within the next 3 weeks, we'll crown a state champion. So nevertheless, let's devote this podcast to breaking down that very playoff landscape. We're going to have quite a few folks involved in this one. We're going to have, 4 different lineups throughout the course of this podcast as we go region by region, and chime in on the local teams that we have in the postseason. So let's start in Region 1 over in Class 6A, which is absolutely loaded. If you check any sort of state poll, some of the absolute best teams in the state reside in this region. Justin, this is the Lewisville ISD territory. You've got how many? Let's see. You have three teams. So Marcus, Lewisville, and Hebron.
Yes. Second, third, and fourth from 6A.
Yep. So let's see what is in store in the first round for those programs. You have Hebron scoring off against Keller. You got some Keller ISD versus Lewisville ISD matchups in this. You have Lewisville squaring off against Keller. Which Keller is it?
Timber Creek.
That's
and that's a doubleheader, 6 and 7:30 at Central tonight.
And then you have Marcus taking on Geyer. So let's look at those first two matchups with Keller ISD versus Lewisville ISD. Whether it's Hebron or Lewisville, Justin, just pick whichever one tickles your fancy.
We'll go in order of finish. How about that? So we'll start with Lewisville. Third year in a row for the Farmers.
Okay.
A lot of players on their team have been on the roster for those 3 years, especially their seniors, Nala Hemingway and Nessa Boyd.
Couple really Boyd. Close losses to Allen, if I recall, in the first round.
Actually, 2 years ago they won.
That's right. And
then
both games were really close.
Both games were really close. Yeah, 2 years ago it was a buzzer beater from Mackenzie Bowie. Third year in a row in the playoffs. Timber Creek finished third in 5-6A. Just kind of looking at their, schedule and how they're playing coming into the postseason, looks like they're a pretty solid defensive team. Not too many teams put more than 50 points on them. They won their last 3 games. They have a player, I'm probably going to screw this one up, Mele Kalahi, but she appears to be their kind of go-to scorer. So I'm sure Coach Allsbrook over there is going to be focusing on kind of trying to slow her down. I'm guessing that's going to be the goal for them, and this is probably going to be a low-scoring game because Lewisville is very strong defensively, very athletic, and if we're making predictions, I think Lewisville pulls this one out.
Okay. How about for Hebron?
Want to give big props to the Lady Hawks.
It's about time.
2 years in a row they finished last year. They didn't even win a district game. Here they make the playoffs, and they didn't even really have to squeak in or anything. They were in the playoffs. By the halfway mark of district, it was pretty clear they were going to be a playoff team. So
what a nice turnaround campaign. It's been a long time coming for the Lady Hawks.
Question for Hebron is health. I did their next to last game when they played Lewisville, and one of their junior guards, Sierra Dixon, she didn't play at all. And then their other junior guard, Deja Melton, she injured her wrist like halfway through. She tried to come back in, shot an air ball on a 3, and the coach was like, "Nope, you're not good right now." So they decided to rest her, so they're hoping to get healthy for this playoff run here. Keller finished second. They have a nice little trio of scorers: Emma Taylor, Sydney McQuieter, and Cambridge Matthews. But kind of like the Lewisville game, I just think they're going to have a tough time matching up with Hebron's, assuming Hebron is healthy.
That's the thing.
They're really quick. They can really shoot the ball. They can score. They can play defense. They press, get out in transition. So if they're healthy, I think Hebron's in a good spot to pull this one out too.
Quickly, just how much though does the dynamic change though if that backcourt is shorthanded?
Huge. They're their leaders. They're their top scorers. They make things go defensively. The press is going to not run the same, especially if Sierra's not out there, because she didn't play at all in that Lewisville game.
Yeah.
And those are 3-year starters. They're juniors, but they're 3-year starters. So it would change the dynamic a lot if either of them are out.
All right. Let's see. Let's quickly talk about the matchup for Marcus, the 4 seed out of District 6A. They draw the 5-6A champion Denton Geyer.
Yes.
Thoughts on that matchup?
I'm sounding the upset alarm here.
Okay. Explain.
I like the way this Marcus team's playing. You know, they didn't beat any of the top teams, but they gave MacArthur, probably outside of Lewisville, their toughest games, including losing by I think 5 or 3 in their second half. They also played Geyer in non-district, and Geyer won, but it was a close game, a 3-point game. And then when you look at like a Geyer, how they squared off against some of the common opponents, including MacArthur, you know, they got drilled. So I didn't have Marcus as a playoff team, but they definitely earned it, and I think they can pull off the upset here.
Interesting. It's the one thing for Hebron and Lewisville, if they do score wins in their respective first round matchups.
Friday it could be tough.
Yeah.
Or Thursday.
The second round of the playoffs might not be as kind as you look at like we said. There's just a lot of star power in Region 1 out in 6A. You have in total 6 teams that are ranked in at least last week's state poll from the TABC, including number 1, number 6, number 3, number 7. So 4 of the top 7 teams in the state reside in this region.
Yep.
And Lewisville, should they get past Timber Creek, would draw number 1 ranked Cedar Hill. Hebron, should it defeat Keller, would draw number 6 ranked Duncanville, which just seeing Duncanville across the court, Duncanville could be ranked 250th, and it'd still be terrifying because of what that program can do come playoff time.
You mentioned Cedar Hill. One funny thing I want to know, look who they play in the first round. They play J.J. Pierce.
Oh.
Who played each other in football and pulled off the upset. With Cedar Hill was one of the top ranked teams in the state.
Good callback.
I don't see this happening.
To be fair, nobody could have foreseen that football one coming either, but yeah, if the number 1 team in the state were to go down in the first round, that would be quite a shocker.
Yeah.
Let's all right, so we can quickly now pivot a little bit to Region 2. We'll dive a bit more, into the Planos and the Allens and the Saxies in a bit, but nevertheless, Brian, while we have you on, I want to talk Prosper, because Prosper is a team that could, you think that the Lady Eagles figure to factor in pretty prominently into the equation out there in Region 2. Prosper enters as the number 2 seed out of District 9-6A. This has been a
little surprised they're not ranked either.
Yeah, they spent most of the season ranked, and then it was kind of an unusual end of the season. You had them having to forfeit a game to McKinney Boyd because they played an ineligible player. They're probably, let's say their second, third best player, Scout Huffman, gets hurt late in the season, and that and they definitely
she's their size. She's their biggest player for sure. So that's
definitely the anchor of the front court for sure. And they kind of stumble a bit down towards the finish line. Just kind of talk a bit about how you're feeling about the Lady Eagles as they prepare for this matchup against Rowlett.
That is kind of disrespectful that they're not ranked. No, they were just behind Allen all season long in the rankings, and then
if you probably expanded those rankings from 25 to 30, they're probably somewhere in that 26 to 30 range, I'm guessing.
For sure, but Plano's 25. I mean, they'll probably be updated later today. These are from last week's rankings, but they just beat Plano. Granted, it was by 1, but if you take away that forfeiture and take away that Allen buzzer beater, again,
they did lose to Plano West though as well, right?
True, but if you take away that, you're looking at a different ballgame. You're looking at Prosper potentially being district champion. If they beat Allen in that game, and they don't have the forfeit against McKinney Boyd, things are different. I think they're getting penalized for a couple things, and this very well could be they could be playing in Allen's bracket with Sachse and whatnot's all over there, but man, Prosper, I'm not saying they surprised a bunch of folks by the way that this season went, but I mean, it was another great year. Jordan Oliver, when you have the number 1 ranked player in the state, Baylor signee, good things are going to happen.
Yep.
They've played Rowlett before. That's their first round matchup. They played them earlier in non-district play. They only won that game by 6. But they had, I think, upwards of a 20-point lead in this game. And then Coach Rochelle kind of called off the dogs a little bit, that type of deal. I think Rowlett was kind of switching some things out. Prosper was kind of trying some things out. So you didn't really get the real matchup. But the way Prosper's playing right now, especially in district play, playing teams like Plano, Plano West, Allen, just going through the gauntlet week in and week out, I don't think that game tomorrow has any chance of being close between Prosper and Rowlett.
It might be, and for reasons that we can get to later on, it might be a blessing in disguise that they're not, that they didn't get the top seed, because if you just look at where the, where the star power is in one half of the Region 2 bracket versus the other half, if Prosper, assuming that, that we're saying, Scott Huffman was hurt late in the season, talking with head coach Trey Rochelle after the win over Plano, he anticipates her coming back for the playoffs, don't know, what percentage she'll be at health-wise, but nevertheless, to have that, just what she can bring, to their, just from a scoring and rebounding standpoint in the paint. I mean, that's huge. And if they are able to, get past Rowlett, it does set up for, for them to, be around for a bit.
And then it would be a third-round matchup against Plano.
If this is all hypothetical, but if Plano and Prosper each win their first two matchups,
take care of business that they should take care of.
They will be. We could get a rubber match in the third round, which would be
third round, which was the Achilles heel for Prosper last year, because then they had to play Lone Star, and that was a great game. Lone Star that had Mallory Adams, that was number 3 in the state, and then Lone Star barely edged them in that game. So they could get some revenge, so to speak, in a third-round matchup against Plano. And then things would get really fun after that if, whoever comes out and with Allen and, like I mentioned, Sachse and stuff on the other end.
Yeah, because you have Allen, you have Sachse, you have Pflugerville Hendrickson, who's number 2 in the state. I mean, there's a lot of strong programs in the bottom half of this region, and we can pick it up right there. So we're going to do a quick line change, bring in Devin Hassan and Taylor Ragland to break down the rest of Region 2 out in 6A, and we will shift gears in a moment. And we have our first line change as we now continue our discussion of girls basketball playoffs. We're talking 6A Region 2. I've got Taylor Ragland and Devin Hassan to break down the landscape for Plano ISD, for Allen, for Sachse, Rowlett, including let's see. Let's start with the matchup that you both have
another one.
Have a dog in the hunt for.
We just did this in the fall.
I know. This budding playoff rivalry between Sachse and Plano East, only separated by what would you say, about 10 minutes or so? 10-15 minutes separate these two schools?
I think they may. Is it even closer than Plano Senior? I know it's closer than Plano West.
I think it is. Oh yeah. When you factor in the highway and all that, but it's happening again. Plano East and Sachse. Let's see. This one is set for. This is a Tuesday matchup, 7:00 at Richardson High School. Okay. This is maybe there might not be a greater matchup that embodies the youth versus experience cliche than Plano East versus Sachse. So Devin, let's start with Sachse, a program that has been on they've been waiting for this part of the season for quite some time, especially in the heels of what happened last year with their first ever state tournament appearance. Just kind of size up how the Lady Mustangs are at heading into their first round matchup against East.
Well, again, you pointed it out. They've been waiting for almost a full year since that first trip to the state tournament. They lost a very close game to Conference Judson, a game that I felt that they were the better team. A Conference Judson team that then pushed eventual champion Plano to the very brink before Plano was able to pull it out. And Sachse returned all 5 starters from that team. They have 2 seniors, Avery Crouse, who we spoke with, Kayla Demas, and they have 3 juniors, Jayla Brooks, Tia Harvey, and Adhel Tech, their post. Again, their entire starting lineup intact from last year, and they've been on a mission. All season long, they're 30-4. They're ranked number 5 in the state in the latest state poll. Really lived up to the billing. Even when you look at their losses, their 4 losses, 2 to Allen, a team they could see down the road. A couple of rounds. But both of those were very close games. They lost to DeSoto, who's the number 3 team in the Class 6A state poll, and they lost to Frisco Lone Star, who's the number 5 team in the Class 5A state poll. So, they tested themselves early. They rolled through that district as many people kind of thought they would. I think their average margin of victory was a little bit over 30 points. So it's been a while since they got a serious test, which Plano East will obviously serve up.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think you can discount that experience and having been there.
How could you?
This team knows how to win, and I think that they learned last year how to kind of elevate their game in the playoffs, which teams need to do. And I think they draw on that experience, and that's going to be a huge positive going against a very good Plano East team coming out of arguably maybe the best district in the state.
This East team was at one point ranked as high as, what was it, like number 2 in the state by the TGCA. I mean, they were turning some heads early on in the season, and this is the dynamic of this East team is you could get into Taylor. I mean, what Tavi Diggs brings to the table, one of the best players in the Metroplex, one of the best post players in this district, and then it's just been just kind of monitoring how the youth around her, how they how a lot of their underclassmen. It's a very, very young team over at East. How they've kind of grown up throughout the season, and it's definitely not a traditional 1 versus 4 matchup. With Sachse obviously being Sachse. I mean, no matter what, they were going to get a team out of 9-6A that was going to be far above the expected caliber of a number 4 seed. So Taylor, just kind of talk a bit about kind of how you feel the Lady Panthers are holding up right now as they embark on their 3rd consecutive playoff appearance.
Well, first it's interesting because you say youth versus experience, but then you have Tavi too. So it's an interesting dynamic because there is so much youth and so much coming back for Plano East, but at the same time, this is the last time that you get to run Tavi Diggs out on the floor because she's moving on, going to TCU. Obviously, probably going to do tremendous things at the college level. But so it's a weird dynamic where you want a good playoff run for her, but then at the same time you have the Ada Anamekways of the world and Kendall Parker, even Kayla Cooper, Tiana Amos. Like those are all girls that freshmen and sophomores that are going to be coming back and making this team largely the same heading into next season minus Tavi. But kind of the story of district play was how up and down they were.
That's what you would expect out of a team with that much youth.
Exactly. They started 1-2, I think, and then rattled 5 in a row off. And then finished like 1-4 with losses to Prosper, Allen, Plano, and then Plano West getting, Jaden Owens back and that team, talk about a team that was left out of the postseason through really no fault of its own. I mean, it's just bad luck that Jaden was hurt for so long because obviously that team has, the ability to play with pretty much anybody. But it's going to be a story of what supporting cast shows up around Tavi. You know what she's going to bring most nights. She's had a couple rough spots against the Jordan Olivers of the world that have kind of shut her down a little bit this season, but shut her down. She's still going to get her 12 to 14 points, probably minimum.
Yeah, you don't ever actually shut down Tavi Diggs.
Yeah, and be hard to handle inside and get her boards and all that stuff. But it's going to be, what do the Kayla Coopers and Kendall Parkers of the world do? What does Ada Anamekwe do when she gets her minutes? It's going to be that dynamic, I guess. So. It's tough to tell. Like I said, if the team that won 5 in a row in district shows up, then we could have a really good one. If the team that went 1-2 and then 1-4 to kind of book in district shows up, then who knows? So
and let me ask you this because you mentioned Tavi Diggs. One thing that kind of jumped out to me, I saw Sachse play on Tuesday. Rowlett crashed the boards on the offensive end, and that's one thing where Sachse looked a little bit vulnerable because Sachse does play 4 guards, and Adel Tech is a 6'1" post, and she's a very good rebounder, but they like to use their guards to rebound and then push the ball in transition and get out there and move. But if a team has enough height to control the boards, that number one, Sachse can't get on the break, and number two, they're getting second and third chances. So outside of Tavi, are they a good rebounding team?
I think it kind of begins and ends with Tavi in a lot of ways, especially inside. She's willing to go to those areas and she can get it done by herself a lot. But then you have, the Kayla Coopers that are kind of more perimeter players. They can score and they can get to the basket, but they're not as able to mix it up like Tavi can. And obviously, experience is a part of that too. Tavi's very experienced in that part of her game and knows that that's her strength. So. It'll be interesting. It's not that any of them, obviously they're talented. They'll go mix it up. And in the playoffs, you never know. People are asked to do things that they wouldn't normally and step up and do things that you wouldn't expect them to normally. But, it's going to come down for me to, how good can Tavi be inside? How dominant can she be? And then, when she needs somebody to make a shot, the Kayla Cooper's out of the perimeter. When she gets an open look, is she going to knock it down and kind of Kendall Parker and all those girls that have kind of been there during when East has gone well. That's kind of been the formula, I think.
2 names to kind of keep an eye on if you're speaking specifically about rebounding: Nina Ritchie and Ada Anamekwe. Those are 2 that if there's going to be anyone to help give Tavi some support on the glass, it would be those 2. And they do have Anamekwe is just an absolute spark plug off the bench, and Ritchie. I saw her play. I've seen East 2-3 times this year, and she can get you on a good night. She can get you 8 to 10 rebounds.
She missed almost all of last year, I think, right? Or did miss all of last year, and has really come back and been a good a good consistent piece. I mean, she's not going to blow anybody away, but she's been very good at playing a role alongside Tabby.
This is the third straight year that East has made the playoffs, fourth time in 5 years. This is the fourth straight playoff appearance that East enters as the number 4 seed out of the district. So just for the sake of maybe laying a little bit of groundwork, what does history say about how East has fared as a 4 seed recently? They're 1-2 in their past, which is, hey, that's good. If you get one win, that's a 4 seed. I mean, but here's from a sheer score standpoint. Last year they drew Flower Mound, district champ out of 5-6A. Lost 51-48. Not bad. Year before that, they beat Euless Trinity 41-39. And then the year before, I guess 2 years prior to that, then they lost to Keller 62-56. So history says that despite, obviously most teams try to go out of their way to avoid the 4 seed, and obviously East would have loved to do that, but this district was just that freaking good this year. But nevertheless, they typically hold up all right in these matchups. So we'll see. Obviously, Sachse is probably a different animal relative to those other 3 teams, given their again that experience. There isn't a roster in this postseason I think as experienced as Sachse. So we'll interesting to see how that shakes out. So let's see. All right, let's look at a couple other teams that we have in this region. Let's look at the speaking of teams that had a lot of experience last year and then turn that into something special. Plano Senior. Plano Senior, very much like Sachse, had their entire rotation back last season, and look what happened. They won a state championship from it. And I guess the title defense officially begins tonight against, they square off against Lakeview Centennial. This one tips off at 7 o'clock out at Berkner. The Lady Wildcats, they come in winners of 4 of their last 5, the one blemish being that overtime loss to Prosper that we mentioned earlier on in the podcast. Great game, probably the best basketball game I've seen in 2019 so far. Solid game. They finished tied for second place. They lost a coin flip with Prosper, hence them being the 3 seed out of District 9-6A. Much like last year, despite that experience, Plano was a team that, at times they would really lean. They put a lot of minutes on their starters last year, and even though a lot of those starters have since graduated, it's kind of the same, MO for head coach Rodney Belcher. Jordan Merritt, Zaria Collins, one of the best 1-2 punches of any team in the area. Then you've got players like Maggie Robbins and Michaela Edens who have stepped into starting roles, and they bring such unique skill sets to the table that it's a Plano team that, despite what they lost from last year, is still proven to be among the better programs in the state, and again to finish second in 9-6A, and just the momentum that they carry into this. I mean, even though they lost to Prosper, that was a game that Zaria Collins didn't play in, and they had 3 kids that fouled out in that game. So by the time you got down into crunch time and you have Jordan Oliver doing her thing in overtime, Plano has 1 starter that is on the floor, that being Sarah Bowles. I'm kind of anxious to see because that game against Prosper was a bit of a departure from how Belcher has approached most of the season. They didn't run much zone against Prosper, if any. This Plano's a team that has run zone for the overwhelming majority of the season. They went with a lot of man and a lot of just kind of trapping press stuff against the Lady Eagles. And then Belcher played more of a kind of a traditional rotation as far as his substitution patterns go. In the first meeting against Prosper, the starters played all but 5 seconds. So Belcher, I mean, if the starters don't get in foul trouble, then he's not afraid to put some heavy minutes on them. And I mean, they're talented starters, so it makes all the sense in the world. But I'm anxious to kind of see if that was just him kind of trying some new stuff out, or how much of that kind of carries over into the playoffs. Because like we alluded to beforehand, there's a chance that they could see Prosper in the 3rd round for a rubber match. But yes, I think as far as just kind of looking at to what to expect out of Plano for the postseason, again, I think the starters staying out of foul trouble is simply those starters, if they're able to go full tilt, they can hang with, you think, just about any team in this region. And you look at them, that versus a team like Allen, which gets rolling tonight as well. They're at Lovejoy against Wiley, a former district rival. This Allen team really righted the ship over the back half of district play, looking like the team that I think we envisioned they could be at the start of the season when we, I believe it was unanimous, we picked them to win the district championship. And even though it looked a little bit rocky there midway through the season after they're getting run off the floor by Prosper, Allen Allen ran the table over the second half of district, and they've won their last 7 games in total. They have an average margin of victory of 12.5 points over that span. Obviously, when you think of Allen and just what they can do from an offensive standpoint, it all starts with Nia Green, 5-star prospect, committed to Louisville, McDonald's All-American, one of the absolute best players in the country. She is averaging over 20 points per game during that stretch, and is coming off a 35-point effort against Plano West. Also, just as key, and this is a player that's, her progress is kind of, noteworthy to monitor, because, the first game that I saw of Allen was back in the finals of their host tournament when I think it was, they played this private school juggernaut out of Maryland, New Hope, and Tyler Jackson, who was one of the key returners for Allen, suffered what looked to be a pretty gruesome knee injury. And you're thinking at the time, like, she might be out for the season. And turns out she was only out for a few weeks. But nevertheless, though, she has really kind of seemed to come back into her own, though, down the stretch, during the, to round out the regular season. And just to get her going as the option B to Nia Green's A, I think that changes the dynamic for this Allen team. Because, what you're going to get out of Nia. And trust me, Nia has to be great, because I believe there was a stat that I, trotted out where if Nia Green scores this many points, they're undefeated, and if she scores less than that, they haven't won in district.
Well, and you saw that last year, though, as far as getting a key piece back with that Plano team.
Yes.
Logo Davenport came back, but in her absence, other people had to step up, and then she just was an added bonus at the end of the year. You feel that's the same way with Allen, with the other girls that had to step up in her absence?
With Allen, their entire rotation has kind of been evolving throughout the course of the season. Like I saw them again. I saw them in district play against Plano. I saw them against East, against Prosper, and then a couple weeks later when I saw them against East, just 2 weeks had passed. It was a completely different rotation, completely different. They were running zone. I hadn't seen them run zone yet all season. It's a team that has definitely tried to experiment with what it can to right the ship. But you're seeing players like Alyssa Tarpley, just a freshman, but she got slotted into the starting lineup, and she's been she's a maybe their best 3-point shooter, despite just being a freshman. It's Allen, so that they're going to have depth as well, and you see that with players like Amy Taylor, Grace Woodruff. They've got some obviously lots of talent there, and just to see it all kind of come together, because it was a team that we knew they had this kind of a ceiling to where they could theoretically, they have the potential to get to the regional finals and whatnot. But if we're just looking over the rest of this bracket, we kind of alluded to it earlier, but the star power in Region 2 definitely presides in the bottom half of this bracket, because you look over that, you have number 5 Sachse, you have number 16 Allen, number 12 Cypress Ranch, and number 2 Pflugerville Hendrickson, all in one half of the bracket. So, and
Hendrickson was a team that Sachse beat in the regional finals last year.
Yeah. Versus the top half of the Region 2 bracket, which has Plano, which was ranked 25th in the last TABC poll, and then Prosper, who had spent most of the season ranked as well. So you're definitely going to have some pretty. It's definitely going to be a bit of a gauntlet.
Well, and even in that bottom half, it's really hard to say because we don't see them. But how good is that Waco, Midray, Copperas Cove, Killeen district?
True.
Sometimes you may see teams that beat each other up, and they may go 0-4 in the first round. But sometimes they come out like juggernauts also, and they may go. And one team I also wanted to mention in the bottom half of that bracket is Horn, who has beaten 2 state-ranked opponents, who is a co-district champion, who's got 2 excellent players in Nia Boyd, Jasmine Shavers, a very deep rotation, and if Sachse's fortunate enough to get past Plano East, and if Horn can beat Copperas Cove, Sachse might be thinking Allen, maybe, third time's the charms, they beat, but they can't look past Horn if they happen to run into Horn, because Horn is a team that they did beat. Sachse did beat them earlier in the year, but Horn is a very athletic, very talented team that has playoff experience of their own, and that'd be a tricky second round matchup for any team if they're fortunate to get that far. We don't know about that Central Texas region, our district, so they could come out and surprise you as well and make some noise in that region.
Quickly before we close out this portion of the podcast, Rowlett, do they have anything to slow the Jordan Oliver train?
Who does? I think it's one of those Rowletts. These 2 teams did play earlier in the year. Those early season matchups, it's so hard to tell because you're still tweaking rotations and subbing some players out that may not play. I think Rowlett's philosophy is going to be to let her get what she gets and let's shut everybody else down. I think that's probably the best strategy because Rowlett doesn't have a single player that can, or I mean, they can double team her all game long, which might be what they choose to do, but I think she's going to get hers. I think Rowlett needs to focus on this game. Nagazia Omaneki, their point guard, senior point guard, their leader, they're going to rely on her to run things, to get her teammates involved, and that's going to be the way they I guess spring an upset, so to speak. I think you can make an argument about seeding because Prosper and Plano flipped a coin, well, so did Rowlett and Lakeview. So you basically had 4 teams that were all tied for second in respect. But I think Prosper is certainly the favorite in this game. But Rowlett, I got to give them a fighting chance. I mean, they do have talent on that team, and I think if they execute their game plan, that certainly gives them a shot.
All right, let's talk some student athlete spotlighting for this. We mentioned Sachse early on. Sachse, a team that has very lofty expectations for the postseason, and they were the subject of the student athlete spotlight. Their standout guard forward. I mean, where do we slot Avery Crouse?
Yeah, guard.
Guard. Okay.
She can play a little bit forward.
One of the better shooters in the state, pound for pound. Avery Crouse. Devin had a chance to talk with Avery about the Lady Mustangs season to this point, and we'll see what she had to say after a word from the sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
Hey y'all, this is Devin Hassan with the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. We're out at Sachse High School talking to Avery Crouse, one of the standout players for the Sachse girls basketball team as they head into the playoffs tomorrow night against Plano East, 7 o'clock at Richardson High School. Sachse coming off a state tournament appearance last season, hoping to duplicate that. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but I kind of want to go back with you. Y'all grow up together, you play on these, elementary school, middle school teams. You got a special group, you're one of 2 seniors on the team. You got 3 junior starters. Going back, kind of looking back, when did you think this had the potential to be a special team?
I would have to say whenever our juniors now got here, so my sophomore year, the change from my freshman to sophomore year, it was just amazing. We instantly had chemistry whenever they got to the team. And even though we didn't go as far as we would have liked my sophomore year, I knew that the next year, we could do something special. And we ended up going to state, so.
Now, you're a 4-year varsity player. How many district games have you lost?
0.
So if I would have told you 4 years ago that you're going to go through 4 years and never lose a district game, would you have thought me crazy, or did you think that potential was there?
I probably would have thought you were a little crazy, but it's been amazing. I can't believe that I actually went undefeated all 4 years here, but I'm glad I did.
Is that something that y'all talked about during the course? Because I talk about the streak in my stories for whatnot. Is that something that y'all talked about, keeping that momentum going, keeping that streak going?
Surprisingly, it was only this year that we actually kept track. Like my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, I was aware that I hadn't lost, but I didn't know the record until this year. And we kept doing, this is 50-0. Oh, now it's 51-0, and it ended up 52-0, I think. Yeah, something like that for me. I know it's a little more for Coach McCullough, but yeah.
Well, and as far as your older sister played here, your dad's coach, where do you get your influence from? One of those two or somebody else?
I think it'd definitely be from my dad. He's been my basketball mentor and life mentor, but basketball mentor and coach for as long as I can remember. From the beginning, since I played basketball in 3rd grade, I think, is when I started. He's been my coach and been my mentor since the beginning, so definitely him. And how special is that, having him? I mean, is this, he's a coach, obviously, but being at the same school, how special has that been? It has its ups and downs, but even though he's not a girls' coach, I can always pick his voice out of the crowd when I'm playing. And so it's been very special just having him here and by my side the whole time.
Okay, and I've seen you play numerous times over the years. I've seen you do a lot of different things. You can shoot, obviously. I've seen, you've been able to defend well. How do you describe your game?
I take pride in my shooting and my defense as well, but I've also worked a lot this past year on not only being a shooter and getting to the rack more and shooting off the dribble. So I would describe myself as first a shooter, but hopefully also I can add to my game and be more than just a shooter.
And what would you add to your game?
I think I've added a lot as well, getting to the rack a lot more, So that's been good. And just being an overall scorer is how I would describe myself now.
Okay, and as far as how you fit into the team, I mean, you guys have been together for 3 years, basically.
Yeah.
What is it that makes this team so successful?
It's our chemistry, for sure. We have absolutely no drama, no beef between the girls, I guess you could say. Just from the jump, it's always been great chemistry. Everyone supports each other. Everyone loves each other. So I think that's what separates us from a lot of other teams.
Now, last year, y'all made it to San Antonio, went on a great run. Along the way, I wanted to ask you about that game against Pflugerville in the regional semifinals,
Yes.
which was just one of the most mind-blowing games I've ever seen because y'all were getting crushed.
Yes.
It was 27-4, and then all of a sudden y'all flipped switch and just dominated from that point forward. What did you learn from that game?
I learned that never give up, no matter how down you are. I know that me and some of the other girls, we were very down in the beginning of the game. We thought our playoff streak was going to be over after that game. But after halftime, we had a big speech from Coach McCullough, and we just picked it back up. We came out, jumped on them, and it was crazy to be a part of. I honestly couldn't believe that we were doing it, but we did, and we ended up coming out on top. So that was a great game to learn from.
And just the experience of going to state, being down there in that atmosphere, it's an experience you never forget. But you have another chance to get back. What do you take from that experience as far as going forward this year?
Well, last year, the whole playoff streak in general taught us a lot. It taught us that no matter how down you get, you always have to play together. Even when you get to state, it's a very different atmosphere, and just the arena itself is a lot bigger than anything we're used to playing in. So it's easy to get really nervous and ahead of yourself. But I think what I learned the most is you just have to focus on what your goal of the game is and not put too much pressure on the game and just realize that it's just another game. And if you win, you get to go to the state finals, which I hope is what we get to do today. Or this year, not today, but...
Well, and I know y'all been waiting. You can't look ahead. You've got to take care of one game at a time and district. But now the time's arrived as far as the playoffs go. How excited are y'all about the chance to get to return potentially return to San Antonio?
It's really exciting. We know that this year we're going to have a more difficult route to get to state, but nonetheless, I think we can still, if we take it game by game and just focus on our goal, I think it's difficult, but it's definitely doable. So I just hope that we get it together, we play together, we play hard, and we win each game 1 by 1 and return to state.
Fantastic. Well, good luck to you. I think that's wrap it up from Sachse High School. Avery Crouse, thank you so much for joining us on the Star Local Media Podcast. This is Devin Hassan signing off, and now back to the podcast.
Thanks to Avery Crouse for taking the time to chat with Devin for our Student Athlete Spotlight. And gentlemen, let's continue our girls basketball playoff discussion. Our latest line change has Justin Thomas back in to talk alongside Taylor Ragland as we go Class 5A. In Region 1, we've got just 2 teams in Region 1, but nevertheless want to give them their due diligence, discuss their playoff futures. We will devote this portion to talking the Colony and Lake Dallas as they get their playoff campaigns rolling tonight. Actually, the Colony draws Colleyville Heritage. The Colony fresh off a district championship in 8-5A. They draw Heritage as the 4th seed out of District 7. Meanwhile, you have Lake Dallas as the 3rd seed out of 8-5A. They draw state-ranked Boswell. So, Justin, let's start with the Lady Cougars. I was surprised when I looked over the TABC rankings to not see them state-ranked. Yeah. It must have been that slip-up that they had in district against Denton that kind of knocked them down a peg. But nevertheless,
maybe, but they were never ranked really before that loss either.
Wow,
so,
it feels like they should have been.
Yeah.
It's like they've had a pretty solid regular season. Nevertheless, though, let's just kind of size up where you feel like the Lady Cougars are at, and just kind of talk a bit about just the road ahead for the Colony.
Yeah, well, they get Colleyville Heritage tonight at Coppell. Mm-hmm. They've played playoff games there before, so I guess they like the Coppell Arena.
Who wouldn't like that arena?
Good point.
That is a top flight gym.
So yeah, they're district champions, 2nd time in the last 3 years, and they get a Colleyville Heritage team that actually made the regional tournament last season, and they're in the playoffs for the 11th year in a row. So pretty good tradition going on over there at Colleyville Heritage. But actually went out when we did our podcast last week, and when we talked to the Colony boys players for the podcast, and I saw Coach Pastisek there and was kind of getting a little scouting report, and she said Colleyville's maybe a little banged up. I think one of their better players is injured. I'm not sure if she's going to play or not, but so that's going to slow them down a little bit, and they were already a 4th place team, and it just seems like they're going to have a tough time containing the athleticism and speed of the Colony, especially their standout backcourt of Jewel Spear and Tamia Jones. So I think the Colony's in pretty good shape here to get out of the first round, but then when you look at the next round, they're going to have a tough matchup probably with Crowley.
Yeah.
I think they're ranked
Number 12th.
12th, yeah. So that's going to be a tough one in the second round, but I think tonight I don't see them getting slipped up by Colleyville Hunters. So I think they're going to move on to the second round and see what happens. I know Coach Pastizik was also kind of looking ahead and saying that Crowley they're really tough to play in Crowley, so it's going to be a big coin flip there because I know the Colony doesn't want to have to play an actual road game there. So,
yeah, if you're just looking over just the region and how many state-ranked teams are in this specific region, there's definitely a lot of star power in Region 1, including the top 2 ranked teams in the state.
Yeah,
number 1 Timberview and number 2 Amarillo, obviously 2 teams that are very, very familiar with deep playoff runs and have some strong tradition there as well. I mean, it's not going to be easy either way for the Colony because even if they are able to get by, if they get by Heritage and then assuming they draw Crowley, if they were able to take down Crowley, who, like we said, is ranked number 12 in the state, you're looking at potentially Birdville, number 19, or number 24, Mansfield Legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, in total, there are 7 teams ranked in the state's top 25. They're in Region 1. That is tied for the most of all 4 regions during the playoffs. So, nevertheless, one of those teams is Boswell, which is a nice way to transition into some talk about Lake Dallas and the challenge ahead for the Lady Falcons. I think above all else, this is just going to be a nice building block for a program that obviously fancied itself as a playoff team, but just considering that the entire starting 5 is going to be back next season, this can only be viewed as a win for Lake Dallas to get this experience against a high caliber program like Boswell.
Yeah, absolutely, and it reminds me of the volleyball team too. Honestly, the same situation. I think they also played at Byron Nelson when I was out there covering their first round playoff loss, and that was semi-competitive too. But like you said, very similar. I mean, this is a team that they felt they were good enough to make postseason. Here they are. They could have been the 2 seed. They got the 3 seed by virtue of a coin flip. So it wasn't like they played their way into the 3rd seed. It was literally just the flip of a coin that didn't end up winning. They draw Boswell. The one thing that head coach Catherine Madison said about Boswell is they're very intense. They like to pressure. They like to play in a way that makes you uncomfortable. So she was like, basically, if my young team, 2 juniors and Dory Norris and Joe Elliott, and then basically all freshmen that start, although senior Ari Hughes has also stepped up as of late and started down low and played really well. But Allie Buchanan obviously plays down there too, and they've kind of been splitting time a little bit. But, in any case, a bunch of freshman contributors, and then obviously the 2 juniors that have been there before, got bounced in the first round last year in a tough one against Lone Star, I believe. So it's just going to be about the response, I think, to that pressure. That's all that Madison said she wants to see. She's like, win or lose, we can walk out of the gym and feel good about where we're going if we respond to what they try to do. If we kind of play with that same intensity, we come out, we're physical, we kind of rise to the occasion. Even if we lose, then it's a building block and it's something to work from. So a good year for Lake Dallas, regardless of what happens. I don't think it's crazy that they compete in this game. I mean, who knows? They have a lot of talent. If the freshmen show up and don't have a bunch of jitters and play from the jump, then who knows? But obviously it's it's going to be a tough road through number 20 Boswell, who beat number 19 Birdville during district. I think they were 1-1, so those 2 teams are pretty close, and I think Birdville ended up winning the district. So I mean, it's going to be a tough one, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, you never know.
Now, did Lake Dallas finish tied for 2nd with Denton, and there was a coin flip that they lost? Okay.
Yep.
So if there is any sort of silver lining, and if they were able to score the upset over Boswell, then, if they were the 2 seed, then by virtue of winning the first round matchup, you would have drawn Mansfield Timberview in the second round.
Yep.
So there is at least that silver lining if they are able to score the upset over Boswell, not having to see the number 1 team in the state.
It's always interesting when teams win coin flips, like which way they want to go, because obviously, the coach over then took the number 2 seed, but I've heard of teams that are like, why don't I just take the 3 and so we don't have to see them if we win. But they gave the Lady Falcons the 3 seed, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Also got still plenty more to discuss though, as far as what is happening in Frisco for the playoffs. Ditto for the Mesquite area, McKinney North as well, and we have one more line change to talk 5A Region 2. We'll bring in Brian Murphy, Kendrick Johnson, and Devin Hassan to round out the podcast, and we will send it over to them in a moment. All right, welcome back. Another line change once again, bringing on Kendrick Johnson. I think, Devin, you were already here, so I'm getting confused. It's like hockey with the line changes right now. But I'm Brian Murphy. I'm back. We'll be talking 5A Region 2. Playoffs tipping off tonight, pinning some of our teams against each other, you know. McKinney North, they squeaked into the playoffs.
Yes and no. They got third place, but they won three of the last 4 games to kind of play their best ball. They have not had a full roster since like the second game of the year.
Really?
Yeah, they had one girl. Let me get my name right. Monica Horn. She's been out the whole year. She came out. She got hurt the second game. She came back the last game.
What was her injury?
She had like a shoulder, like a labrum.
Ooh, okay.
And she came back, got a double last game. She's a post presence. Their second leading scorer, Chelsea Wooten, she's been in and out. She's had several injuries. And then they even had their leading scorer, Mario Phil. She's been necked up, but she's been playing. She's been like 27 points a game in district. She go get you some
27 a game. Well, she's gonna need all 27 and then some.
That's why
against Frisco Liberty,
because North's record is 11-20, but like on the paper it's like it's a laughable game, but they have a history to fall back on. This to be the 10th consecutive season this program has been in the playoffs. So these girls are used to playing in the playoffs, even though they had a down year this year. And Coach Hamilton, I know she'll have some scheme cooked up, and I know they're not favored, but they'll probably slow this game down to give themselves a chance because they definitely can't run with Frisco. They don't want them
to say the least. So speaking of teams that are in the playoffs, every year, I don't remember the last time Frisco Liberty did not make the playoffs. They're in the regional tournament almost every season, and they're in a good spot to make another deep playoff run. And McKinney North is standing in their way. Liberty, they're soaring high. They just beat Frisco Lone Star in the district finale. They beat them pretty good.
They have a letdown.
Yeah, after losing to them in overtime the first time they played. Frisco Lone Star is number 5 in the state. Frisco Liberty is number 11. This team is loaded. They have a stud in Randy Thompson, and then they have a bunch of other girls that could be starters on just about any other team. They run about
that Lone Star team we saw a couple years ago when they had Mallory
Adams, who's at San Diego State, and Adriana Quezada.
The future MVP.
Possibly. Well, that could be for another debate there. But yeah, no, Frisco Liberty, they're loaded. They run about 10, 11 deep. They have a freshman who's come in, Jazzy Owens. She's a spark plug, 6th man off the bench. She'll guard your best player on defense. She'll get some buckets. Like I said, you have Randy Thompson, and then Kaylin Lay, very underrated point guard, very important. They have, so Kelsey Kurek is probably about 5'10". Randy Thompson's about 5'11"-ish or so, and she's kind of their guard. Forward.
Very athletic.
They're very athletic and very well coached. They're a machine. They can shoot threes. They can get buckets in a variety of ways. I don't know anything about McKinney North basketball, but I don't see this one being close.
What's you put the point spread at?
Okay, so to put it in perspective, Liberty beat teams like Frisco Centennial, who was the 3rd seed in the playoffs. They beat them pretty good the first time they played, by over 20. Other than that, they were beating teams in Frisco by 30, 40, 50 points. And they just beat Lone Star by double digits, or by 9, I think it was, in the final game of the district play. So don't be surprised if this one is a good 30 plus.
Don't want y'all hear that. No thank you, though.
Just contact me. I'll leave my number on the final skid. Another one of this in this bracket here to note: Denison plays Frisco Centennial Tuesday. That one could be a good game there. Frisco Centennial, really good year, finishing 3rd in the district. They played really, really well against teams not named Frisco Lone Star, not Frisco Liberty, even though they did take Lone Star to overtime earlier this year. Denison, believe they're 8-2 in that district, and the only 2 losses came to Wiley East. So that one has potential to being a good game there. Let's move down to the bottom half of this bracket with one of your teams, Devin, Mesquite Poteet, sitting pretty there in the playoffs. Who are they up against?
They are going to be taking on Midlothian, the 4th seed out of 14-5A. Poteet, kind of a sleeper team. In a sense that when you look at that region as a whole, the Frisco teams jump out at you. But here's a Poteet team that went undefeated through district, only had 2 or 3 games that were relatively close. Everything else, they pretty much handled business. They're 21-5 overall in the season. One of the best 1-2 guard combinations that no one's ever heard of, into Johnny Perry and Amaya Briggs. They're both very active on both ends of the court. They can both incredible shooting touch for both. They can both penetrate, and they're the catalysts on defense. I mean, their pressure defense starts with them, and they really set the tone on both sides of the court. Jelia Johns is a 6-foot post, so they do have a presence on the inside. So it's interesting to see. It's also so hard when you look at this region. It's going into every playoffs, because you look at that potential second-round matchup, and it's Jacksonville and Sulphur Springs. We don't see those teams play at all. And then, you look across that region. That's why it's so hard. It's easy to say Liberty and Lone Star are the favorites, because we don't know about Hallsville or these other teams going on. So, Midlothian, that district, Red Oak won that district in what seemed to be a fairly tough district. That's one thing you can say about 13-5A. Top to bottom, it wasn't the strongest district. You had a 3-way tie for 4th between 3, 4, and 8 teams. And Forney got in with a overall losing record. But Poteet took care of business where they needed to. They're going to be the favorite as the number 1 seed against Midlothian. I'd like to see them go a couple rounds. I think they have the potential to possibly get to that regional quarterfinal game, where they'll probably run into Red Oak.
Another team to kind of watch out for that could be sneaky good is Wiley East. They went undefeated in their district, and they faced Frisco Memorial. First year ever as open as a school. They don't even.
Frisco schools come out the gate like that. Like I was like, hey, we're gonna make this a girls' basketball school. Come here. We're gonna make this a football school.
Well, that's illegal for them to say, hey, come on over, and unless you're zoned for those areas. But no, Frisco Memorial, they had the luxury of pulling from schools and programs that already have established athletes like Wakeland and Lone Star. They pulled a little bit from Heritage, so they got some players. We know how good Lone Star and Wakeland are in multiple sports, even Heritage as well. So they got some athletes, and they made the playoffs, in a really tough district. First ever year as a program, as a varsity program, like I said, with no seniors. That one could be a game to look out for. Memorial had played some teams tough, like the Lone Stars, and they kept things somewhat competitive at times this year against the top dogs in Frisco, and they made the playoffs. They'll face Wiley East. And
very good Wiley East.
Very good Wiley.
Akasha Davis last year was one of the more impressive players. I saw she was just a freshman. She was the newcomer of the year in that district. They were in the Poteet West Mesquite district last year that Wiley East won.
That's right.
But they've been solid since I've kind of been able to pay attention to them for these last 4 years. So you're going to see a good team. But like you say, Memorial's got a shot.
Yeah. The thing is, Memorial's very inexperienced. They have some studs that are underclassmen that could be good, next year, the year after that, and be that, potential new hot team on the block next to Liberty or Lone Star, but right now, I mean, they're still going through the growing pains, and we'll see if they can maybe pull off an upset. But I'll be at that game tonight at Plano East for some Monday night action, and then another one that I plan on going to tomorrow night on Tuesday is Lone Star and Lovejoy. Lone Star, obviously, the number 1 seed. They're number 5 in the state, and then Lovejoy, number 4 seed in the district. I think they were 4 and 8 in last time I saw in their district standings. This one could be ugly. No offense, Lovejoy, Lone Star. We might be on a collision course for.
So you think it's gonna happen?
He's got Lovejoy and McKinney North people coming after him now.
Hey, we'll see. If they win, then I've really got some people coming my way. But Lone Star is just that good, and it stinks for Lovejoy because last year they opened up the playoffs first round against Prosper. It's just not fair, But that's what happens when you finish 4th.
I was about to say,
in the district.
You your seed.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And then you're facing literally juggernauts that could win the state championship. So, I mean, this could be a collision course for Frisco Liberty and Frisco Lone Star facing off in a regional final. That's when they would meet. But that's still a long ways away. We're focusing on the first round here. Lots of good games tonight and tomorrow. Good luck to McKinney North. We'll see.
Laughing, man. Certain things that happen.
That is true. Cedar Hill, J.J. Pierce in football, and they play each other again in basketball tomorrow night. Which
I actually seen Cedar Hill play. I saw them play against South Garland and Tyrese Maxey. They have.
Are you talking boys. We're talking girls. The girls are ranked number 1 in the state, but
I had seen the play.
but they're number 1 in the state, and so that's all you need to know. So a lot going on, and we will have another podcast later this week on our reactions from these first round games. So make sure to stay tuned for those then. That's Devin Hassan. It's Kendra Johnson. I'm Brian Murphy, and we'll talk to you later this week.
At him.